All right, maybe a little bit clickbaity, but not really. So if you've seen Black Widow, I don't want to ruin this for anyone. So if you haven't seen Black Widow, don't watch this video or come back and watch it after you watch the movie. But the beginning of the film, the opening is basically you find out that the I don't know if they're called the Romanovs. I don't think it even says, but the family that Natasha is a part of is an embedded family in the United States, a Russian family put there undercover to spy on the U.S. and like steal secrets. Now, this takes place in the 90s, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, it kind of makes sense in Avengers world, right? But this actually happened in real life, okay? Back in the 1970s and 80s, this was a real thing. There were, and I'm sure we did it to Russia as well. But there were Russian assets who came over, like they were specially trained, learned to nail our accent and act as American as possible. They were put over here to raise families and blend into society and steal government secrets. If you haven't seen, there's this series called The Americans, which I've talked about on this channel before. Fantastic series. Definitely a series you should watch, especially if you enjoyed the opening to this movie. But when I was first watching that series, I wanted to look it up because it sounded like something that could be true, but I wasn't sure that it was legit. So I looked it up, like, is The Americans based on true events? And sure enough, yes. In fact, it was based on a family that this really kind of happened to. It was like the story of these kids who were raised as Americans, had no idea that their parents were Russian spies, and they all just grew up, and they were here for like, I don't know, 16 years or something, spying, working regular American jobs, going to American schools, completely embedded in the culture. Kids didn't even know they just thought their parents were regular, average Joe Americans who ran a travel agency. It's crazy. Anyway, the beginning of this movie said exactly that. Like, that's exactly how the beginning of the movie was set up. So, that's what it was based on, because it's real stuff that it was based on. That's what got me so excited. When I saw what they were doing in the beginning, I was like, oh, I know what they're doing here. Like, a little bit before they actually basically said it, I'm like, I see what's going on here. When they were like, we gotta go, I'm like, what the heck's going on? But when they started packing up their stuff and just like getting out really quick, I knew exactly what was happening, because I know that, Natasha is Russian, and so I just assumed, like, oh, her parents are Russian assets. That's what's going on. They're here undercover. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting. I thought it was a cool thing to talk about here, and maybe a lot of people don't know that this really happened. Like, obviously not the Romanovs and not in the 90s, but in the 70s and 80s, this is a real thing. Russian assets embedded in American culture and society that seemed exactly like any other American you would meet. Yeah, and they were doing all kinds of covert stuff. But yeah, definitely go check out The Americans if you haven't watched it. I loved Black Widow. I thought it was an amazing film. I was kind of worried because, it's a prequel, and well, not really a prequel, but just something that happened a little bit further back in the timeline. But I enjoyed it very much, and I will be doing an exclusive Patreon review of it with a friend of mine for the Marvel Plus podcast. So if you don't know what Marvel Plus is, I do a podcast where each week I break down the latest episode of the Disney Plus Marvel series. And I created a Patreon page basically to cover everything that's outside of the Disney Plus world. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. If you're not interested in spending any money to hear my dumbass talk about Black Widow, then go over and check out the Marvel Plus podcast, 100% free, and just listen over there and see if you enjoy it. Anyway, if you enjoy videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. I try to post daily. I'm not perfect, but I do my best. But I talk about everything, entertainment, pop culture, life stories, all kinds of stuff. So if you're interested in something like that, getting new and interesting stuff in your feed every single day, then subscribe. And if you decide to subscribe and stick around, then I will talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks.